was getting something really important. There we go. Running around my house going, get a hat, get a hat. Right, so hello, happy Monday. I hope you are all doing well. As always, could somebody please just type me a little hello so I know that you are there and that you can hear me. I've had a bit of a frantic day today, been very busy, so panic stations. Who's there? Say hello. Come on, don't be shy. Let me know who you are. I'll start singing. If somebody doesn't type, hello, Gigi. There we go. There we go. All at once. Great. Lovely. Very excited to have you here. So let me say hello to people as they arrive. It always takes people a few minutes to rock up. I think it takes a while for YouTube to let everyone know that the stream is live. So whilst I wait, I'll say hello to people. So we have, I'm going to probably murder your name here, so I apologize for that. So we've got Olubusoya. I probably killed that. I'm really sorry if that was an awful way of saying your name. Phonetically type for me. That would be great to be able to pronounce your name. Handy, hello. Let me know where you're from as well. I love to know where my little YouTube channel has managed to reach. So let me know where you are coming from. Neten, where are you from, Neten? I think you're new. I don't think I recognize any of these names so far. Carolyn, hey Carolyn, how you doing? Nice to see you again. We've got Waylin. Hello Waylin, how are you doing? Okay, so whilst we wait for people to arrive, please do keep saying, Hande from Istanbul, but you're living in the UK. Very nice. It's cold, isn't it? I'm freezing. It's been such a rainy and horrid day here in the UK, Hande. So I don't know how you cope if you come from Istanbul. This must be very unpleasant for you. Neten, you're from Nepal and you live in Virginia. Awesome. Oh, okay. So Bossola. Bossola. Have I got that right? I hope I've got that right. Okay. I'm sorry if I have murdered it. Do my best. Okay. So, yeah, you're cold as well, Hannah. My nose is so cold. I've actually had to put powder on my nose because it's so cold. It was red and shiny. And it really would have been ridiculous had I been on here wearing this hat and then a red shiny nose. That'd be taking it one step too far. All right. So I'm just going to get going. People will show up as and when they are ready. So I've decided you're probably like, why the thing on your head? It's not yet Christmas or the holiday, whatever you call it in your particular occasion. But in my house, we love Christmas, not a Christian house. We just love to have fun and sparkly lights everywhere. And we have ridiculous hats. So I've decided we have a whole collection of very silly headbands for the holiday season. And I've decided my advent for the holiday season for these lives will be, I'm going to wear one of these for every single session in the run up to a Christmas day. So, hey, you can enjoy me looking ridiculous because I like to look ridiculous. I don't take myself too seriously. All right. So let me introduce myself and we will get going. So if you don't know, although I'm sure you do because you found me through my YouTube channel, I am Gigi. I am the Amazon Interview Whiz. I was a senior leader at Amazon for a number of years. And most usefully for all of you, I was an interview bar raiser. So the difference you'll find when you look at content on YouTube or anywhere else between me as an interview bar raiser and maybe the product managers, engineers, recruiters, all of those other people that you'll find on YouTube is I have a much more diverse perspective on the Amazon interview process than they will by virtue of being a bar raiser. So if you're just a normal hiring manager or interviewer at Amazon, chances are you will only experience interviewing within your own immediate sphere, either recruiting for your team, recruiting for similar teams, or recruiting for teams that you work with really closely. If you're a recruiter, then you will only experience hiring recruiters. Oh, I forgot there's bells. You're going to be hearing these bells as well. Sorry about that. I'll try to keep my head still. You will only be experiencing recruiting recruiters or for your particular subject specialist area. So all recruiters in Amazon have a specific area that they cover, whether it's software development engineers, solution designers, whether it is brand managers, finance, operations, whatever it is, every recruiter will have a specialist area and they'll work only in that area. So they'll only see the process from that particular point of view and through that lens. Bar raisers can interview and bar raise on any role across the entirety of Amazon. Tech, non-tech, they tend to have a specialty. My specialty was non-tech, although I did bar raise in tech, but also any job family. So I have bar raised and interviewed across dozens of different job families, finance, vendor managers, software development engineers, solution designers, the guys that build the roofs on the fulfillment centers, security, pretty much anywhere and across the globe. So many different countries, UK, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Turkey, the US, Japan, you name it. So I've got a perspective of the Amazon interview process that is incredibly holistic. I know what it takes to get hired at Amazon, and I personally hired hundreds of Amazonians. Whilst I was at Amazon interviewing and bar raising, it became very clear to me the people that had specialist training and those that hadn't. They knew exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it. They knew the trigger buttons, the words, the lot. I started to look into it and discovered that kind of one-on-one coaching for Amazon interview preparation can be pretty expensive, $200 to $750 an hour. I felt that I could make it much more accessible to people using digital platforms. So I created my YouTube channel. There's probably, I don't know, like 10, 15 hours of very specific, very actionable coaching on my YouTube channel. And then I created my own academy where I've created digital courses that will basically teach you everything you need to know about the Amazon interview process and everything that you need to do, say, no, to get hired at Amazon. So part of what I've tried to build as part of my ecosystem is this free session that you're at today, where you can basically ask me any question you like. I suspect I should be able to answer about 95% of them. Sometimes people ask me very specific questions about very specific job families and the exact nature of their interview in that job family. Sometimes I just can't get to that level of detail. There are thousands of different job families in Amazon, and no one human being can know everything about all of them. But I will try and tell you if I can't answer your question so you don't keep repeating it. Please don't ask me general questions. I've got my interview tomorrow. Gigi, any tips? Yeah, whole YouTube channel full of them. So if it's just a generic any tips question, please go check out the channel first. Other than that, ask me anything that you need to ask me, and I will scroll through and try and answer those questions for you. I have an amazing freebie to give you at the end. So please stick around, because if you don't, you will miss out on an awesome freebie that is well used and well loved. So I think that is all of my spiel done now. So please do start throwing your questions into the chat. I'll pick up the ones that generally, actually, I managed to answer almost everything. So just put them down there and I will, I'm sure, get to it eventually. And as new people arrive, I will say hello. So please do, if you're a new arrival, say hi, tell me where you're from. I love to see who's here and where you're from. So let us just get going. I've already said hello to a few people, so I'll say a few more hellos whilst people write their questions down. Oh, we have someone from Lagos. Ah, awesome. Lagos. And again, another place I absolutely would love to go to one day. Kevin, where are you from? Villegas. Kevin Villegas? Kevin, I can probably cope. Sorry if I butchered your surname. Okay. Hey, Kevin. So do I have any knowledge of the interview process for Amazon software engineer apprenticeships? So Kevin, I can't tell you that I know specifically that around apprenticeships and how the apprenticeships interview differs from the normal interview process. Best thing I can recommend for you, Kevin, is to prepare yourself for a software development engineer interview. And then at very worst, you're going to be over prepared. So, and as someone said to me on one of these sessions a few weeks ago, they've never regretted being over prepared. So Kevin, if you haven't already, please go to my YouTube channel and look for the interview that I did with Vivek, who is an ex-Amazon software development leader. He's now at Facebook, and it's a video all about tips for software development engineer interviews. There's also a free download that you can get, a PDF guide to that as well. Go check that out. And I think if you can prepare yourself as best you can in the context of apprenticeship rather than a experienced professional, that will probably set you up well. Okay, I hope that helps to a degree. I'm going to take that off. There we go. Hey, Jasir. Welcome back, Jasir. How are you doing? Haven't seen you for a couple of weeks now, I think it is. So I hope you're doing well. Would it be appropriate to postpone the start date to next year? That's a bit of a how long's a piece of string question, Jasir, because it completely depends on the context. So it depends on why it is you want to postpone your start date. It also depends on what you've already agreed as your start date. Now, if I was your hiring manager and you had agreed to start working for me in a week's time, which is 2 weeks before the end of the year, more or less, and you said, look, actually, that doesn't make a lot of sense, I'd prefer to start in January, then I would probably say fine. I mean, how much of a difference is 2 weeks going to make? You're not going to be very up to speed in Q4 anyway, which is a very critical time for Amazon. And I would probably say, yeah, whatever, not a problem. If you had agreed to start with me at the beginning of December and you wanted to put it off a month, then I would probably be slightly less keen. So Jasir, it completely depends on the context, and you should talk to the hiring manager and have a really good reason for wanting to postpone. Okay. Oh, Tom, it's summer where you are. Don't brag, Tom. That's not nice to tell me that it's summer and you're sipping cocktails on a beach somewhere, wearing your sun lotion and your Speedos. That's not kind. I've got thermals on here. Honestly, some people can't get the candidates these days. All right. Oh, and Kevin's in LA. Nice, Kevin. Actually, I just had a one-to-one coaching session with someone in LA, and they were telling me that it's going to be like 80 degrees or something later on today. Again, trying to make me jealous. You're all very unkind people. All right. Okay. Yeah, Carolyn. Hey, so you had your loop. All right. There was no interview with the hiring manager. Interesting. You did several peer interviews during your phone and loop interviews. Is it strange we've never been interviewed by a hiring manager? Yeah, Carolyn. I'd say that is unusual. Now, in some circumstances, hiring managers don't get involved or can step out of the process and be very confident that they're going to get the right hire. So when you're hiring for pretty junior roles like brand managers, kind of entry-level roles, and some sales roles as well, kind of entry-level sales roles, because what's required of the role is so common and it's pretty cookie cutter, hiring managers can be pretty comfortable that they can delegate to their team or even other people at the same level as them and be confident that when they say they're inclined for a candidate, that they, in turn, as the hiring manager, would also have been inclined had they been there. In terms of other roles, it's very unusual not to meet a hiring manager because, quite frankly, if you're going to be working for somebody, most hiring managers would want to be part of the process that decides who they're going to be working with on a daily basis, which is why it's uncommon. So, Karen, what I would say to you is if you get an offer, I would then be asking to meet the hiring manager before you accept that offer. Your hiring manager contributes so much to your experience of working at any company, not just Amazon. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me that you should meet the hiring manager and make sure that you are going to be happy working for that individual. If they've extended you an offer, Carolyn, they want you. So they will, to a greater degree, pretty much bend over backwards to try and secure you, particularly for the end of year. They're going to want to close their recs for the end of the year, because when you move into the next year's cycle, it's a whole different budget, and they're not going to want to lose that rec and that headcount. So if they extend you an offer, they're really going to want to close you. So if you get an offer, Carolyn, ask to speak to the hiring manager. And I know you're an Academy member, so I've got a great list of questions in the Academy courses that you can use to really find out whether that's the type of hiring manager that you are going to want to work with. Hope that helps, Carolyn. Any other questions, feel free to ping on the Discord group. I'm sorry that I had to cancel the Q&A this evening. Family stuff. Okay. Oh, thank you, Tracy. You are more than welcome for all I do. Thank you for saying that. That's kind. Bianca. Oh, from South Africa. Very nice. So you want to inquire the best response to the question, how have you dealt with ambiguity? So Bianca, there is no best response. There's no best response for any question. There are things that they are looking for in terms of the behaviors. And the one that you're talking to me about when it comes to ambiguity is the bias for action leadership principle. So when it comes to bias for action and what they're looking for, they're trying to make sure that you can make decisions when you don't really have enough data. When the world is moving around you, they want to understand, how do you make decisions? What data do you use? At what point do you say, I don't have data, or I don't have enough data, I'm going to make a decision? And what do you make that decision based on? So there's no best response. There's simply the behaviors that they're looking for when it comes to bias for action as a leadership principle, and then how you then go about articulating those behaviors in the context of the example that is relevant for your particular space and your job title. So if you really want to do a big deep dive on bias for action, Bianca, I'm going to give you my free Customer Obsession Masterclass at the end of this. I have a masterclass for every single leadership principle. They're only $15 each. So if bias for action is the one that particularly interests you, you can just head over to the Amazon Interview Wiz Academy and buy yourself for $15 the bias for action leadership principle, and it will tell you exactly the behaviors that they're looking for in response to that question about ambiguity. Okay. Oh, Neten, you've taken my notes from my YouTube channel. That's awesome. Actually, one of the other things that I was thinking about doing is creating a bit of a guide for the YouTube channel. I know there's a lot of content there and people aren't quite sure how to consume it and in what format. So one of my tasks for the next couple of weeks is to come up with a bit of a PDF that's got a description of each of the videos and a hyperlink to the video. So you don't have to trawl through the playlists. You can just go to the PDF and click through. So if you would find that useful, please do let me know, because it's going to take me a few hours to create that. So please say, yes, I would like that, Gigi, if you're interested in that, and I will invest some time in it. Oh, Aladdin. Hello, Aladdin. Hello, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Sammy's here. Hey, Sammy, how are you doing? Lovely to see you. Oh, right. Is it okay to whiteboard responses to behavioral questions? No, Sai. Would that be the right way of pronouncing your name? No, you don't need to do that. Whiteboard is to help explain kind of technical solutions and how systems flow into each other and the different layers and things like that, which is why solutions designers use it. The whole point about the behavioral questions is not about the actual technical solution and the details of the technology. It's about how you behaved. That's why they're behavioral questions. So what did you do? Who did you talk to? How did you talk to them? What were you thinking? What did they say to you? How did you respond to what they were thinking? So that's what you're trying to get to, the how you went about doing something, not the what did you go about. You need the what, obviously, to get to the how. But whiteboarding, when you're describing how you did something, doesn't make a lot of sense. So no, I would not recommend whiteboarding, because I think you'll find yourself getting distracted far too much by the what and drawing process flows or step-by-steps. And that's not what the behavioral interview is all about. It's about, how did you behave? If you want to know more detail about the difference between the what and the how, I do have a video on my YouTube channel that tries to describe the difference between how and what, which will give you a bit more of a narrative around the difference between those two and why those two things are different. So head back to the YouTube channel and have a look at that particular video. We've got Dawn from DC. Hey, Dawn from DC. Is it cold there? I was just talking to someone from New York earlier on today, another one-to-one. I had 2 one-to-one sessions today. It's been a busy day. And she was in New York and she was saying it's getting pretty cold there. So I imagine DC must be getting quite cold at this time of year as well. Okay. Okay. Hey, Sammy. So you need to decide between applying to Pathways Leadership Program versus a senior program manager, which is best, different salary growth level, etc. Okay. So which is best? It depends what you're looking for. Differences, okay. Okay. Salary completely depends on where you are in the world. So salary you need to check for yourself. And I don't know actually, and no one will be able to tell you the different salary bands within Amazon. That's like locked under lock and key, that information. So I have no idea what the different salary bands are for all of the different roles in Amazon. Growth level. Okay. So a senior program manager role would be a L6, but you can go into Pathways also at an L6 level. So the level themselves is not related directly to the program. The key difference between the Pathways Leadership Program and just going into a particular role is there is a map of progression that exists in Pathways. So very clearly in Pathways, you either go in as an area manager or as you go in an operations manager, and there is a pathway mapped out for your development. So you would simply follow that pathway going through loops to get you up that ladder in a very straight line as is predetermined by Pathways. When it comes to coming into the business as a senior program manager or a senior product manager or a development, an SDM or whatever, a marketing lead, whatever, there's no pathway, boom, boom, hence the term, mapped out for you. There's simply, you do your job, then you identify either do you want to change your actual skill set? Do you want to go from a senior program manager to a senior product manager? Or do you just want to keep going in a straight line to a principal program manager, VP for director program manager, etc., etc.? That's your path to map. Whereas under the programs like Pathways, the pathway is mapped out for you and you simply keep getting promoted within that pathway. By the way, you can always leave that program as well. If you decided that suddenly you wanted to change from being an operations manager to a program manager, then you could just do that. You can always leave the program. So is there a massive difference? Not really, based on my understanding. It's just the clarity of the pathway that's going to be different between going in under a particular Pathways program or just hopping in a particular role. And then the other details about salary, etc., that I don't know and no one else will be able to tell you, I'm afraid. Okay. You interviewed for an L7, Carolyn. I think that's kind of nuts, actually, that you've, being brutally honest, maybe that was too brutal. I think it's kind of nuts. I remember you telling me that yours was an L7 role, that your director has never bothered meeting you. That's crazy. Carolyn, let's talk on Discord separately about this. This is slightly bonkers. I would never, as an L7, hire an L6 having not met them. And I certainly wouldn't expect an L8 to hire an L7 having never met them. But there might be extenuating circumstances. Maybe there's a big change in the team, something like that. But ping me separately on Discord and we'll have a little bit of a one-to-one chat. Okay, moving on then. Oh, wow. Hey, welcome back, Error 404. You got the role, an internal transfer. I remember us talking about that. Oh, you got at least 3 people to like my videos. Thank you. Congratulations, Error 404. I'm getting an increasing number actually of internal existing Amazonians coming to me for support, which is awesome. You know, there's nothing better than to have internal Amazonians believe in you. So congratulations. I'm delighted for you. Onwards and upwards in your Amazon career. Okay, moving on then. Hey, Abram, how are you doing? How important is a LinkedIn profile in the application process compared to resume? So look, I'll give you my opinion on this, right? And of course, there is no definitive right or wrong in this space, right? This is purely different people's opinions. So I'll give you my opinion and then I'll point you towards somebody else who I think you should also go and get some info from. So they serve completely different purposes. So your LinkedIn profile is generally there for people to find you. So I'm not a recruiter. I have never been a recruiter. Let me be very clear about that. But as I understand how recruiters use LinkedIn is for sourcing. So they're looking for someone to fill a role and they will go to places like LinkedIn. They will use Boolean search terms and they will try and find people that match the criteria that they're looking for. And then they'll review their LinkedIn profile. Your resume is something you submit. So you're not waiting for someone to come to you. You've identified a role and then you submit your resume. At that point, your LinkedIn profile is irrelevant, really. Maybe people will go and check you out on LinkedIn just to get some context about maybe what activity you do. Loads of people don't put any content on LinkedIn. No one's going to not interview you because you don't post regularly on LinkedIn. Your resume is the document that you submit because you've identified a role that appeals to you. So they are apples and pears, and therefore they don't serve any kind of comparative benefit if you've applied for a role with your resume. If you want to be found by recruiters who are looking for people to invite to interview, that's when the LinkedIn profile is useful. So I'm going to direct you towards Amy Miller, Recruiting in Yoga Pants. She is an Amazon recruiter. She puts up loads of content about the top of the funnel. As you know, you'll all know most of my content is about when you've actually got to the interview stage, whereas Amy tends to focus on the top of the funnel because she's a recruiter. So go to her YouTube channel. Again, it's Amy Miller, Recruiting in Yoga Pants. If you go to my storefront in YouTube, you'll see that she is a featured channel on my storefront. So you can always click to it from there. She has tons of content about recruiting and being a candidate. And one of the videos that she has is the difference between the value of a LinkedIn profile and a resume. She broadly says what I've just said, but maybe more succinctly and with more clarity and with the perspective of a recruiter, because she is a recruiter and I am not. I hope that helps. Okay. Right. So just as a reminder, everybody, please don't ask me general questions, any tips for interviewing for this type of role. I need specific questions and I can definitely answer specific questions, but don't ask me for general tips because generally it's all there on the YouTube channel. Really, if you want to understand your exact role, please deconstruct your job description. You can go to, and Sonia, sorry, this is a bit loaded. I was referring to you. So I'm going to call you out. Sorry. Sonia, I can't give you tips for a senior tech recruiter interview other than please go check out your job description. It will all be there in your job description. So you need to deconstruct that. And if you deconstruct that line by line by line by line, you will be able to see what the key leadership principles that they're looking for in tech recruiting. You can also go and check out one of my videos, which I've done. I do this live for people. I've done it twice. I might do it again, maybe in the new year. And I show you literally how you deconstruct a job description. The other thing I'll say to you, Sonia, is I interviewed Amy Miller, the lady I was just talking about a second ago. I did an interview of her for her on my YouTube channel. I think it's under my playlist called My Amazon Journey. She is a senior tech recruiter at Amazon. She's also been a recruiter at Google, and Microsoft. So check out the interview I did for her because she goes deep into what you need to be thinking about as a recruiter applying for Amazon. So hopefully those 2 videos will help you out materially. Okay. Okay. Right. So following up from your question before, so your LinkedIn profile isn't up to date compared to your resume and you haven't been contacted and you're wondering whether it's causal, I suppose. I suspect it's not causal, that because your LinkedIn profile isn't up to date to your resume, that people are not interviewing you. That would be a bit of a silly reason to discount someone if they had a really good resume. But just get it up to date. It doesn't take too much just to spend an hour updating your LinkedIn profile just to align it to your resume. I doubt very much whether that is a causal driver of why you aren't getting contacted off the back of your applications. There we go. Okay. Okay. So Kick03. So you've just done the HireVue interview for a business analyst intern. Okay. You missed one Excel question. You read the question wrong. Can you still get the job? Well, you're not going to get the job straight from HireVue anyway. HireVue is just the first step in the process. So that's the first thing to note. It's about your overall performance in HireVue. I doubt very much if making a mistake on one question is going to completely discount you. Can't say that for sure because I do not know in honesty the exact details of how they make the assessment on HireVue. It's very, very high up the funnel. I would suggest that unlikely that one mistake is going to completely discount you, but you're not going to get the job off HireVue anyway. It's a filter. So from HireVue, they'll then decide who they're interested in interviewing. So I doubt very much one mistake will stop them from deciding to interview you if the rest of your performance on HireVue is impressive. Good luck. Okay, what else do we have? Oh, good question. Good question. I'm going to go for Pankaj. I hope I've got that right and I haven't offended you. Where are we on time? Okay, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to answer this question and then I'm going to do something. So, do you have to raise the bar on all 5 interviews of the loop? Right. So, you don't actually ever raise the bar on an interview. So let me explain to you what happens. Your interviewer, you're talking about 5 interviews of the loop, right? So each of your interviewers on the loop will have their own leadership principles assigned to them. They'll test you on those leadership principles and they will take a view as to how you performed. And they have a 5-point scale from concern, some concern, mixed, some strength. That's the 5-point scale. And they will decide based on your answers where they think you land for each leadership principle. I call it calibration. I'm not sure if that's the official term, but I call it calibration. They will decide how you calibrate against that leadership principle. Then based on the questions that they've asked you and the couple of leadership principles that they've landed on, they'll then decide, would I be inclined to hire this person just based on the data that I've gathered? Would I be inclined to hire this person? And they submit that vote. Then what happens is everybody gets in a room together and they read all of the data. And having read all of the data, they then talk about the data and they try and calibrate you overall. So they take all of that information. They say, well, okay, Billy was testing on Dive Deep and he calibrated this person as strength. How does everyone else feel about that? Has anyone else got any data on Dive Deep? And they will discuss all of the data that they all gathered on Dive Deep and what they believe to be the right calibration. So they'll calibrate you maybe for all of the key leadership principles. Different bar raisers run it slightly differently, but they'll calibrate you based on that kind of the way the bar raiser chooses to structure the interview. And then based on that overall set of data and the overall discussion and what they're looking for in terms of the key leadership principles for the role, they will then decide whether you are raising the bar overall. So no one is really, it's not binary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, raising the bar, raising the bar, raising the bar, not raising the bar, not raising the bar, on balance, raising the bar 3 out of 5. Doesn't work like that. Someone expresses an opinion based on the data they've gathered just on their interview, and then they reread everybody's data, everybody discusses it, and then overall they will decide whether you're raising the bar. So it's almost an unanswerable question, because actually it doesn't work in the way that your question is structured to imagine that it does work. I hope that makes sense. In fact, it's not almost an unanswerable question, it's an unanswerable question, because it doesn't work the way that your question phrases that suggests it works. Okay, so I hope that helped. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. So I would really like to ask you, could you please spend 2 seconds, thumbs up, liking this stream, both everyone that's here now and anybody that watches in replay. The reason I ask is the YouTube algorithm needs positive signals from you, the viewer, the consumer, that this content is good content. And those positive signals are either a thumbs up or writing some comments on my videos like, thank you, Gigi, or this is amazing information, Gigi, or I have another question, Gigi. All of those things are really positive signals for YouTube, and it will then improve my ranking in the algorithm. It's really hard to rank well in the algorithm, so I'm discovering, and there's a load of rubbish, and I don't know why, but this rubbish outranks me, and it's appalling. So I need your help, please, to improve my ranking by giving some positive signals. So I'm going to ask you in the next 2-3 seconds just to go and like the stream for me. And because usually I sing a little song and people think I'm slightly crazy, I created a little video. So whilst I play this video, please go away and do kind of the little like on my video, people who are live, and if you're watching this in replay, in fact, especially if you're watching this in replay. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to play my... Go on and like this stream for Gigi. Like this stream for Gigi. Like this stream and all your dreams will come true. Like this stream for Gigi. Like this stream for Gigi. Like this stream and all your dreams will come true. There we go. There was my video. I hope it was not too creepy. I played the less creepy of the 2 videos. I have another one, and a whole bunch of people told me that it was really quite freaky. So I decided not to play that one. So thank you very much if you did like the stream. If you didn't like the stream, why? Why not? Please. Right. Begging over. That's the humiliating part of this session over with for me anyway. So what other questions do we have? Right. Moving on. Sorry, I'm looking for another question that I can answer. Okay. Bianca, what would the leadership principle? It's not a learning principle, it's a leadership principle, but I'm assuming that's a typo. When was the last time you sacrificed a long-term value to complete a short-term task? Okay. So usually questions about making compromises. I mean, that's not a question from the Amazon interview question bank, by the way. I know I have those questions memorized. I asked them so much and watched them, read them so many times over in my thousands of hours interviewing at Amazon. And that is not a question from the Amazon interview question bank. So I can't tell you what leadership principle it is exactly, because it's not from the AIQB. So given the slightly unusual phraseology, and by the way, hiring managers can make up their own questions. They don't have to follow the AIQB. But what tends to happen when hiring managers make up their own questions is they tend to be not quite as clear as the ones in the AIQB are in terms of the leadership principle that they're going after. So I'm suspecting that if you've written this down word for word, They obviously made it up. I know this because it's not an AIQB, and because they've made it up, it's slightly twisted in terms of the clarity. So if I was being asked this, when was the last time you sacrificed a long-term value to complete a short-term task? I would be imagining that this comes from something like insist on the highest standard, where the question tends to be around making sacrifices in terms of value over cost. So that's just about how do you still make sure that you are getting the very, very best quality outcome for your business. How do you kind of quantify making those sacrifices in order to achieve something in the short term? So what compromises are you willing to make in a world of where you really, really want to insist on the highest standards? What trade-offs were you willing to make against that highest standard in order to be able to get something out the door? They're curious about how you make compromises in a world where they want the very, very best quality, how you rationalize that, what prioritization decisions you're making, how you quantify that prioritization, how you plan to circle back in order to be able to underpin and backfill any prioritization or compromises that you've made. So I think that's an IOHS question personally, but it's been slightly distorted in the asking. Okay. Okay, so you got a question about how do you hand off your work to a colleague or a new manager? I got this question when you were interviewing for a technical program manager. So I think that's another IOHS question. So they're trying to understand, how do you go about making sure that when you hand work over to somebody else, that they know exactly what you know, and that there's going to be no drop off or failure point in between you handing to them and them picking up from you. So that would be, I think that's another IOHS one. Okay, moving on then. Okay, this is interesting. Jean, hello, welcome. New subscriber. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. So you have an upcoming phone screen for a cloud support engineer. Your AWS recruiter suggested going over the most commonly used leadership principles. How do they know what the most commonly used leadership principles are? I would love to know how they know that information, because as far as I'm aware, nobody knows that information. Either are they used when they're saying commonly used leadership principles? Do they mean commonly used in day-to-day operations of Amazon as a whole? Do they mean most commonly used leadership principles in terms of the interview and the most commonly interviewed leadership principles? Either way, I really have no idea how they would know that data. Because number one, how would you possibly gather data on the most commonly used leadership principles in the day-to-day operations of Amazon? Cannot imagine the data gathering exercise you would need to go into for that. And equally, there's no way of data gathering the most commonly interviewed leadership principle questions, because that data is not held in a mineable format in a database anywhere. No, that's not true, actually. Somewhere you will be able to see who's been assigned what leadership principle. I'll take that back. You could probably mine that data. You can't mine the data of which questions are being asked, but I'm going to rewind and say maybe someone could mine the most commonly assigned leadership principles in an interview, but I've never seen that data. If it exists, I've never seen it. So, second part of your question, does this mean that you shouldn't focus too much on other leadership principles? So, Jan, I'm going to guess that they've given you, right, right. They mean the most common for the role. Well, again, unless they've told you, Jan, what the most common are for the role, how are you ever supposed to know? But I'm going to assume that they've told you what the most common for leadership principles are. Big leap, but I'm assuming they've told you. Should you only focus on that? No, that feels like a very high risk strategy to me. Now, it does depend on what role you're applying for, and you don't say in your narrative exactly what role you're applying for, but you're probably going to be asked, if you're a non-tech person, you're probably going to be asked up to 10 different leadership principles, because on average, you're going to have 5 interviewers, and each of those interviewers in a non-tech space is going to ask you 2 leadership principles. So you're going to have 10. If you're applying for a tech role, you're probably going to be able to halve that number, because half of your interview is going to be taken up with technical competencies. So you may only cover 5, 6 leadership principles. So for sure, definitely do the leadership principles that they've told you are the key leadership principles for the role. But if I were you, I wouldn't just trust that you'll never get asked anything else, because that's a pretty high risk strategy. So having said that, no one actually knows what the most common ones are. You really should make sure you've got customer obsession covered off, deliver results, dive deep, bias for action, earn trust. What else would I say? Earn trust. And invent and simplify. I think if I was giving anyone advice on what ones to not miss, those would be the ones I would say to everybody to not miss. So take the 1 of the 4 that they've given you, take the 6 that I've given you, and work out what the gap is in between. No guarantees, obviously, on any of those leadership principles, because I don't make promises on that score. But it's pretty high risk to only do the 4 that they tell you, because God forbid you get asked something else, you'll be completely stuck. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Let me unselect you. Okay, let me scroll back up to where we were before. Okay. Vijeth, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. I love it when people say hello. It's so polite. It's like you've walked into my house and you've said, hello, Gigi, which is nice. I like that. Okay. Oh, the water parrot's back. How you doing? Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. It's always a delight to see you, the water parrot. Okay, we've got Nena 1881. How are you doing? Ah, yes, I get this question really regularly. Pretty much every single, I've got to do a video on this. I've decided, yes, I have to do a video on this because I get asked it at every single live session. So I'm going to do a video. So thank you for prompting me for that. Can you use the example you used on the writing example for your panel? So my general advice is, if you can avoid repeating, do. Right? It's not the end of the world if you repeat, but if you can avoid it, great, do. If you want to repeat something, I suggest that this is probably the best scenario to repeat it in. The reason being is, and let me just clarify the writing sample, because some people won't know. If you're applying for an L6 role or above at Amazon, you should be asked to do a writing sample. That's because all decisions made in Amazon are based on somebody having sat down and written a document about it. And usually those are the more senior people in the organization. So that's L6 and above. Some roles that are roles particularly focused on writing, like product manager roles, people more junior are asked to do writing samples. So L5 product managers are asked to do writing samples, but generally it's L6 or above. Okay, so the purpose of that writing sample is to, unsurprisingly, find out whether you can write. Can you write a clear and concise document that is specific, direct, to the point, and tells a good narrative that a person who knows nothing about the subject can just sit down and read and know enough to be able to understand what you're talking about? That is the purpose of the writing sample. It's far less about getting evidence on the behavior and the leadership principles. So it used to be an invent and simplify one, and maybe an I'll write a lot one. So I'm not sure if that's still the case, but it's much more about understanding how you write than it is about gathering data on your behaviors for that leadership principle. So if you do need to repeat, this is why I say this is probably the best place to repeat between interview and writing sample, because the writing sample really, it's all about the writing and far less about the actual gathering of the data on the leadership principle. So yes, I'd say to my candidates, you're perfectly fine to do your repeating there. You should actually, if you do end up, this is just a side note, if you do end up using the example that you used in your written assessment in your interview, you should just give your interviewer a heads up. So it's as simple as, just to give you a heads up, I did actually use this as the example in my writing assessment, and I'm going to use it again now. Boom, boom. So at least they're not surprised if they read the writing sample. Not everybody will read the writing sample. The bar raiser and the hiring manager are obliged to read the writing sample. Nobody else is obliged. Sometimes they do. Okay. I hope that was helpful. Okay, hey Rad, how you doing? Can you get more than 3 questions about the same leadership principle, like ownership? That would be hard. Can you? Yes. Should you? No. Is it likely to happen? No. So, in an ideal world, right, everyone should be assigned 2 leadership principles. Best practice based on my training as a bar raiser is to aim for 3 questions in a 45-minute interview. So 4 questions in an hour, 3 in a 45-minute. Best practice. Plenty of interviewers will not ask 3 questions. The average seems to be somewhere between 2 and 3. Some interviewers will only ask 1 question. And if your examples are relatively simple and not have much meat or complexity to them, you can easily get up to 5 questions, maybe even 6 questions, particularly if you're quite junior. So it is, in theory, possible to get 3 questions on one leadership principle, but that's a bit inefficient as an interviewer, because what you're trying to do is gather as broad a set of data as possible. You've only got 45 minutes to do it in. So generally, you're going to try and gather 1, 2 questions on an individual leadership principle so that you can move on to your other leadership principle. It is possible, Rad, obviously, if your examples are really basic and they don't have much complexity and it's only taking you like 3 or 4 minutes to go through an example. If you've got a 45-minute interview to fill and your examples are only 3 to 4 minutes long, then you could very easily find yourself or find putting the interviewer in a position where they've got no choice but to ask you lots of questions on the one leadership principle. So if you want to avoid having to answer lots of questions on one leadership principle, make sure you have a good, meaty, juicy, complex example that takes time to explain and invites lots of interesting follow-up questions. That is your best insurance policy against being asked many questions on one leadership principle. I hope that helps. See what other questions we have here then. Traveling Man. I think I just answered that question, Traveling Man. Awesome. Awesome profile picture, by the way. You look like you were having a great time that day. Cool. Traveling Man. I think I just answered that. So you should not get the same leadership principles from different interviewers. Everybody is assigned unique leadership principles. The reason being is, as I said, Amazon is trying to collect as diverse data sets as possible and cover as many of the 16 leadership principles as possible. And that can't be done if everyone's asking exactly the same leadership principles. Now, having said that, some of the questions in the different leadership principles sound similar. So there are definitely questions in bias for action and Right a Lot that sound very similar. There are questions in earn trust and bias for action. Earn trust and have backbone, disagree and commit that sound very similar. So you may find yourself hearing a question that you think you have already been asked by somebody else. Chances are they're actually going for a different leadership principle. If you really think it's exactly the same question, then just call it out to your interviewer and say, I think I might have been asked this question by X interviewer. Do you still want me to answer it? But in principle, no, everyone has their own unique leadership principles assigned to them before they head into the interview. Okay. So what happens if your interviewer is only able to ask you 1 question or fears for time? Do they interrupt you or hurry you up? All right. So how do I best answer this? So your interviewer will absolutely hurry you up if they feel that you're taking too much time in answering your question. Now, as I say, some interviewers are very happy with only 1 question because it may well be that your answer is so interesting, so rich, so complex that they feel they can get everything that they need from that 1 question. Other interviewers may not be happy to have you spend your entire 45 minutes talking about one question. I personally would never be happy with that. And if I felt someone was taking too long to answer a question, I would interrupt them and I would say, okay, let's move on. I'm conscious of time. Tell me what the result was. So you have to just listen to the cues coming from your interviewer. One of the tricks that I teach my candidates is that it's quite useful sometimes just to check in with your interviewer and just say, am I giving you the right level of detail? Do you need me to lift it up a level, or do you need me to give you more detail? And then they can tell you whether they want you to go deeper or whether you're going too deep and they need you to kind of lift yourself up a level and speed yourself along. So that's a useful little trick to identify whether you're pitching it at the right level or not. Hope that helps. Okay, so moving on. Okay, just quickly on this one, CAB. I don't know whether I should call that CAB or what, CAB. You're going to need to ask me something a bit more specific. So, do I have any tips for candidates with not a lot of experience? Tips about what? In what context? What is your specific concern having not a lot of experience? If you can be more specific, I will attempt to answer it for you. Okay, what else do we have? So, okay, William, I'm just going to quickly do this. Right, as I said before, another one, how do you prioritize and manage multiple customers at the same time? Okay. So again, this is not a question from the AIQB. There's a lack of context in this, which would allow me to land it in exactly the right leadership principle, but it's all about prioritization. So that cuts across two different leadership principles. There's prioritization in terms of being able to still deliver results when you're juggling different balls, and that I've just given you the clue is in the world, delivering results. So that those questions tend to be around how you are still able to get your business metrics and your outcomes when you've got lots of different things that all have to be done at the same time. The other place where this plays in is in bias for action, where you're having to make decisions on how to move forward and prioritize work when you have effectively more work than you can handle. So again, this is not a question directly from the AIQB. Somebody has done something to kind of slightly to rephrase this in the context of a particular role, because not all roles have direct customers. So it's either going to be a deliver results or a bias for action question. You should just effectively answer how you actually make prioritization decisions, and then your interviewer would have to be the person leading follow-up questions to try and help them get to whether it's specifically deliver results that they're looking for or whether it's bias for action that they're looking for. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Sorry, I'm reading here and seeing what other questions there are that I can pull up. Oh, yeah, I love to have one of these. I always love having at least one of these a session because it's good for me and it's good for all of you. So Michael, or Mikhail, isn't it? I never know how to pronounce that. Michael, I'm sorry. Either way, if I've ruined your name, I do apologize. You've got your position for an SDE2, an L5, and you start next week. Oh my gosh. Oh, you are so welcome. I am absolutely delighted for you. What a way to end 2021. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had a mixed year. I still have not left my house very much. I'm a bit fed up of my four walls, and I love my four walls, but what a way to end the year, and amazing to start 2022 with a new career. I say it every week, but I will say it again. I don't think you will ever work anywhere where you will learn as much in such a short time frame as you do in Amazon. I think Amazon years are like dog years. They're worth 7 of working in any other company. So you will learn so much. You will, without question, work with the smartest people on the planet. That's what I love the most about working at Amazon, is just smartness of the people. I'm not even sure that's a word, but I've made it up. I've decided it's a word. You'll love it. Congratulations. Well done. Super proud of you. Thank you for coming and letting us know. Okay. Okay. Cash. So a lot of your experience, I'm trying to kind of think about how to answer this question while I'm reading it on the fly. So bear with me. A lot of your experience has been about starting a problem from zero. Okay. You understand depth requirements, but one who's worn a lot of hats, depth is difficult. Does Amazon value this over technical depth? That's almost impossible to answer, Akash, because I almost don't quite understand the question. So I'm going to simplify that up, which is, does Amazon value technical depth versus the behavioral side of things? It's both, right? So it's not enough to be a technical expert in your field. You have to raise the bar on the leadership principles. They care about both equally. If you can't raise the bar on the leadership principles, technical knowledge is really not going to help you. If you raise the bar on the leadership principles and you have some gaps in technical knowledge, you have more chance than the other way around. Technical skills can be taught. Leadership principle can be taught. Behaviors can be taught to a degree, but they are looking to hire Amazonians. Generally, they can teach you technical skills. I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, because it sounds like your question is really quite specific to the type of role that you're applying for. So generically, that would be my answer when it comes to what they value or how they value technical over other things. Okay, so I'm conscious that we've actually magically somehow entered a wormhole, and suddenly 5:30 p.m. my time has turned into an hour later. So I don't know how we broke the space-time continuum there. How did that happen? But I am going to try and take another question or two, because there's quite a lot of questions here. So I'm going to keep going. As long as you're still here and you want to keep going, I'm going to keep going. My kids are doing something else, stuck on devices, and I can't hear them yelling at me for food. So whilst they're not starving to death, I'll keep going. Let's have a look. So let's go. What else can we find? What else do we have? Okay. What else do we have? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Davey. So you finished your loop on Wednesday. Yes, there is a 2 and 5 promise. Are there any tells on how long to get back to you? None whatsoever. None whatsoever. So there's literally no trend that I've ever been able to identify, either inside the business or outside the business. It is just, it's such a game of chance in terms of how I've realized I'm completely shadowed on one side. Terrible lighting today. Sorry, people. It's such a game of chance as to how quickly your debrief happens, because you've got 5 people who are all trying to get to the same place at the same time. They've all got different diaries. They've all got different managers. They've all got different priorities. So there's no trend whatsoever. The only thing I will say, Davey, is more and more and more over the course of 2021, am I hearing that the 2 and 5 SLA is not being met. So at the beginning of the year, if it went materially over the 5 days, I would be saying to you, you probably didn't make it, and your recruiter is just prioritizing other people in the pipeline before they get back to you and tell you that you haven't made it. But now I have to tell you, I've had candidates from the academy not here for 2 weeks and get an offer, which at the beginning of the year, I'd have been very surprised at. So if you do go over the 5 days, don't start assuming that you haven't made it. It would no longer be the case. I think it's more common for people to actually go over the 5 days and the 2 days than it is uncommon. Hope that helps. Sandy, do I have any great questions to ask your interviewers? You like to ask them about recent achievements and challenges they face, but are there Amazon specific ones to ask? So there's no such thing as Amazon specific, right? Amazon is massive. It's across so many different sectors and verticals. Like there's no genericisms really when it comes to what the right thing is to ask somebody in Amazon, because it's going to depend on the vertical that they're in and the part of Amazon they're in. I do have a video, Sandy. I'm sure I do have a video that I did not so long ago about good questions to ask interviewers. So I think in the video, what I do is I go through questions that I've particularly liked being asked when I was interviewing and bar raising at Amazon, and why it is that I like them. So head to my YouTube channel and you should be able to find that video there. I think I offer different questions actually for the different, I definitely do. I remember now. I do so many of these videos, I forget them. I've given you different questions that you could potentially ask the hiring manager, a peer, and someone who isn't related to the team whatsoever. So go check out that video. That will help. What else do we have? Oh, okay. Yeah, David, I think I'm going to go for your question, David. And then my child has now returned and is going to require feeding. So I'm going to do this question and then I'm going to share the best freebie on YouTube for Amazon interviewing. So you had 5 questions for the 2 interviews today. Okay, right. So 3 and 2. Yeah, as I said, that's about consistent with what I said earlier. And you've now used them all. You've got 3 more interviews tomorrow. Do interviewers share your questions or can you ask them again? Right. Okay. Oh, I see you had 5 questions lined up for your 2 interviewers today. So this is you asking them questions. Right. Sorry, David. I didn't understand that. Do the interviewers share your questions or can you ask them again? So ultimately, when they get to debrief, everyone sees everybody's data. So very likely that your interviewer will have written in their notes the questions that you asked them. It's not meant to be used as evidence to make a decision to hire you or not, but quite often interviewers will just note down the questions that you asked them. They won't actually see that. No one's going to see that until everybody has submitted their vote. So what happens is when you are assessing whether you are inclined to hire a candidate is you do your interview, you write your own notes in the system, and then you say at that point whether you would be inclined to hire this candidate based on just your own data set. It's only once you have submitted the button that you get to see everybody else's notes. So nobody will see what questions you asked the previous person until you've already met them, asked them the same question, and then they press the button. Hopefully that makes sense. So for sure, you can ask the same questions of everybody over and over. Whether they saw them or not in advance, I think is immaterial. One way or another will make any difference. I think the point, David, is why would you ask the same people exactly the same questions over and over and over? You've got a broad spectrum of people that are going to come and meet you, and you should use that opportunity to gather as broad a spectrum of data for yourself as possible. So there are some questions that totally make sense to ask everybody if you want a different point of view from people on the same question. I don't know, things like what do you like the most about Amazon? It's great to understand different people's perspectives on what they like the most about Amazon, but what you also want to do is make good use of the people that you're meeting. So the questions that you would ask the hiring manager, I would suspect you would get more value asking the hiring manager very specific questions about the trajectory of the role and how the role is going to evolve than asking the bar raiser. They're never going to be able to answer that question, but you might want to know that answer. Ask the hiring manager. If you want to know from a team member, it might be useful to ask a team member about the hiring manager, what their perspective is on the hiring manager. That would be something that really you'd only ask the team member and would be useful to know, but there'd be no point in asking that of the bar raiser. And you could ask it of the hiring manager, but clearly you're asking them to judge themselves. So there's no problem if you ask everybody exactly the same question. No, they won't see each other's questions before you've had a chance to ask them that same question. My challenge to you, David, is I think that's a wasted opportunity, and that if you've got more interviews coming up tomorrow, think about what new questions you could ask them to get as much data as possible to help you decide if that's the right company, job, team, hiring manager that you want to work with. Okay, so on that note, we have hit time. So do not go anywhere yet because I'm telling you the best freebie on Amazon interviewing on YouTube. Go to amazoninterviewwizacademy.com and get yourself my free Customer Obsession Masterclass. I've created a whole new way of understanding the leadership principles that nobody else has. It's unique to me. So this Masterclass will tell you the 4 different facets of customer obsession. It will tell you everything they're looking for in your answer for customer obsession. It's literally a blueprint for what you need to tell them. And it just a little mock interview, me interviewing me, so you can see how it all comes together in an actual interview. It will be all of you will eventually be asked customer obsession. I won't say all, 90% of you will eventually be asked customer obsession. So there's honestly no reason not to go and get yourself this completely free masterclass. I give it away free because obviously I want you to sample my product and love it. But if I was going to give one away for free, Customer Obsession is the one. So please do go and grab yourself that free masterclass. I promise you, I will not be chasing you with marketing upsell emails. That's just not what I do at the moment. So go get it. Thank you very much for joining today. If those of you that managed to land jobs, congratulations. I'm super proud. Those of you with interviews coming up, I wish you the very best of luck. If you have other questions, just put a comment on the appropriate video on my YouTube channel and I will attempt to answer it for you. And if you haven't already, please like this video, put a comment in, like any of my videos that you watch, put comments in my videos. It's all good signals for the algorithm. And I would be very grateful for that contribution in return for the gift that I give you of my knowledge. So for now, be safe. Come back Wednesday if you still want some more support, and look after yourselves and look after your families. Bye-bye. Oh, I'm the best. That's so sweet. Thank you. Bye.